tricks. He's got a new trick that will truly amaze us. Can't wait to see what's in his bag of tricks. It's really quite hard to not rhyme that with dicks. The new trick has begun, it's about to be fun. He's gonna try and catch a beaver fight out of a gun. And when I say gun, well I really mean cannon. Please don't get distracted by this half-price cannon. Oh no, the cannon's gone off prematurely. Trev don't seem quite ready, is this gonna end poorly? High-speed beaver be the end of his whimsical tricks. So while Trevor was away, learned to do sweet backflips. Slipping so fast that he's come right back in time. Steals a magical whip from himself, sure it's probably fine.
72, yeah. Thank you, David, for doing that.
Now he's back and it's time to save his high-speed beaver. A flick of his whip magic's up a fluffy Sheba. Beaver meets Sheba who's softer than a towel.
I think she's too locked in.
All that we need is a yes from Mr. Cow.
Yeah, I didn't hear you.
I said thank you, my little
Thank you, Asian person.
yeah, for the maths. And then Flowy Cat said,
That's racist?
yeah, because Asians are all good at maths.
How come that is racist? That's compliment.
It's I know it is. Bubby, that's the most Asian I've ever heard you sound. Ah, that's compliment.
Oh, shitty walk.
She's like, you fucking bastard. She's probably.
No, I still don't get it.
You said that's
I know that's a stereotype. I know that's a stereotype, but still,
Yeah.
we are good at math.
You are, yeah, that's right. Exactly, it's a flex. And then Joel said it's like having you it's like you brag about it. You should brag about it.
Astronaut even. I have astronaut even. No, I don't.
And then Joel said it's like having a little having your own little calculator.
I didn't say Asian at all. You're just adding fucking words onto me now.
Brother,
I heard Joel say that.
brother,
as well, mate.
I didn't say Asian then. I said your own little Asian calculator.
There you go. I didn't say that.
It's so ingrained in me. I didn't even notice. I didn't even notice.
I'm not surprised, that's Joe.
It's
Did
true.
it again, the bastard.
It's true. It is Joel.
It is. It's me.
Hi. Joel's the problem. It's me. Get them all, mate. Just get them all.
I don't have the fucking.
I don't like Emma.
That's because you don't practice. You don't like anyone you don't know how to play.
I don't like Tank.
Mm-hmm. What do you think I suffer through that?
Mahaha.
Gambit came out and he actually wasn't broken.
Oh, I forgot to try him.
Mm-hmm. You might be good as him.
There's so many stuff to do for him.
Yeah. He does have like... He's like Huay on League of Legends. He's got like 14 abilities.
Yeah, exactly. Too many.
What, mate?
Sorry, does he also look silly with a paintbrush?
Gambit would look silly with a paintbrush. I just realised on my stream it says you are black, yellow.
Reported.
Yeah,
Black and yellow, black and yellow. You know what it is.
Everything I do it big.
Can I ring Gus, please? I can't do it.
I can't do it.
Give me a second.
I can't even do it, man. It was Paul in the last game. He was just playing.
It's not even touching the ground, man.
It's not even touching the ground.
Oh,
I
he
know.
went Bard.
So it's like,
Your stick's not touching the ground, man.
What then?
I don't get his dash do. Like, what does the dash do?
His dash is just damage and mobility.
Oh no! I need a
3 possible worst champs. Aatrox, Urgot, Sona. Brilliant.
Nidalee's going to be up for grabs.
Oh, stop a little fucking.
Nidalee's up for grabs.
Thank you.
Hi,
Crap.
it's me. There's fucking Zacharino there, brother.
Oh, I had Zach, mate, and I saw a fucking little crabby boy.
You see a little fucking Mr.
Why do you
Quabs.
want to be crabby boy?
Hi.
Warring Kingdom or Super Galaxy?
It's got to be Warring Kingdom.
Or Bewitching?
Warring Kingdom.
Okay.
Done Shang in it. Come on, here we go. The lingo's coming out.
Liu Bei Zhang Fei Guan Yu.
Who's young men for Cao Cao?
Ah, Sao
Learn
and Sao Pi.
something new. Learn something new. Oh my god! Every time.
Hey. What I need.
Just
Yeah.
about to get banned from Twitch.
Hey, there's a Chinese person in this chat and she's laughing. That's all that matters. Zuzu Dianwei's Leon.
Oh, I was gonna hit the old fucking. Oh,
Ah,
mate,
CVE. Ah, Wasula. Why does that traditional trundle look like he's fucking on Brazzers?
You can just tell he's got a fucking hog on him, can't you?
He's good. What's the hog in World of Warcraft? What's it called? I can't remember what it's called. Hogger.
Trev.
It's fucking.
Hogger, innit?
It's not me, you fucking rat. I just ate some. Don't think cooked all the way through garlic mini pizzas. It's got that slight plasticky taste. I want to say no.
But you're not sure though.
No.
What?
Also, I showed Lynn that video of Tyler 1 and Ludwig. When he's like, don't tell me no! I played Draven for 15 years! I said that to me and Lynn on every game.
Yeah.
I'm like,
exactly.
do this. And she's like, no, it doesn't work. And I'm like, don't tell me it doesn't work.
AD. This is.
That was gonna happen like for at least a year.
I don't think it'll ever change.
Maybe one day.
Hi. Oh, I've got to change my League of Legends overlay.
What's going on here? What the fucking health pots to change?
Yeah, it's Christmas, brother. That's why I wanted you to do a little bit of Summy Riff, mate. Hi.
Oh fucking hell!
Oh my god, there's two sets. Fuck. Oh, I missed that one. I hate it.
Not gonna lie, guys. They've got a really good team.
We got Ridley though.
We got a fucking Yone. My game is so loud.
Who are you, Joel?
Zacharino, mate.
It's on, mate. You bring your shorts, bring your fucking skivvies and your banana hammocks, man. Going in.
So loud. Hi, Lynn. Did I send you guys there when you don't turn your mic off when you're talking to your girlfriend and the guy's here? Did I send? It's basically it's the new cat meme that bow bow. You've had like the cute orange cat, and I keep saying it because I love it. And I was like, I sent Lynn when you accidentally say it, and don't mute. And in every game he goes in, his mates just say bow bow.
I really hope that happened on your stream so that I can repeat.
Nah,
I have a clip of it.
Nah, I'm unembarrassed of stuff like that.
Too bad.
I'll lean into it and just say it's about Joel.
Like a cock on a Friday night.
Yeah, I'll just say it's about Joel.
like all those reels you show me,
Yeah.
the most impressive one is that the girl saying gay. And that one you sent to the other cat.
Send this to a little gay boy.
Nothing wrong to be a little gay boy.
There's like a pretty Asian girl, and she goes, "If you've got a little gay boy you love as a friend, send it to him." And he goes, "Listen here, you little gay boy, you're loved, you little gay." And I was like, "Yeah, sending that to Baby Cats." It's like them ones. Hey, #1 thing to stop doing this year: stop being a little bitch. I fucking love them. I'm alright, actually, Trundle. By alright, I mean I'm going in. No.
Almost.
Yeah, bow bow.
You really love that much.
I love it.
Give too much.
I do. Yeah, bow bow. Yeah, bow bow, some yeah. Hi, me. I'm the problem, it's me. Well, mate, you got this.
Fucking get in there, son.
Wes is said, oh, he missed me and got rumbled. He's a fool.
Been rumbled. He's been fucking rumbled.
Hi. Yeah, bow bow.
Got still. Here we go.
Got our gold, mate. That's what you got. I tried getting the karma.
Fucking Beaner bangs, mate.
Beaner bangs, mate. Beaner bangs.
I'll fucking save you.
You'll be a hero. Oh.
Oh, God.
I'll take that assist.
How did you get that? Fucking hell, I came in like... Oh.
You came in like a fucking wrecking
You know
ball,
what I'm
mate.
saying? I came in like fucking Nagasaki, lad. Let's go, baby. We're going in again.
You came in like fucking Hiroshima there, buddy. Hi. Yeah. I'm the problem, it's me.
Oh, this karma needs to leave it the fuck out, man.
I just think you and Luke need to dodge in one year. Stop.
Why am front lining?
That's true, mate. You're absorbing.
He's feeding off me. Oh, Luke, keep me alive, please. Oh, good man. That'll probably save me, that did.
Why'd you sound so sarcastic then?
What? No, actually did. Oh, no.
I have to say, I have been converted. Yeah,
Do you have to?
I do.
You cannot.
I do. I have to say it. I feel converted.
What, to Islam?
Yeah.
He's moving to Bradford.
Nah, Leicester, mate.
Leicester? You're Leicester, are you?
Yeah. Nah, I fully enjoy Norms more than Aram now.
You fucking changed, mate.
I have changed, mate. I'm sorry.
I see that little fucking calamity then, just smashing them together right into rumbles. Mate, I'm so good at this game, you know. Get me in a fucking norm right now.
Let's fucking go. Let's go. Cheeky little bit of help. Hi. I'm the problem, it's me. Fucking, that one hit my tit. Fuck off. He got me. He took Ignite. He took Ignite.
Who did?
Fucking Trundle.
Goober.
What a goofy goober.
A lovely Luke. Lovely little dusty number there. Oh, right, okay.
Sorry, mate. Trundle was on us.
It was on me. Because I ain't died yet, he wants to kill me.
Oh, well, hopefully you get fucking killed then.
I'll die now.
Well, I forgot that Taylor Swift song in my head. Oh, it's because we were singing it.
I don't think the best one.
I'm the power.
Keep thinking Rumble's name's Giacomo.
Overpriced website that is, bro.
The fatties.
It's not even for fatties anymore, mate. It's for fucking people who think they're fat, but they're not.
It's not for real fatties.
It's not for real fat. It's not for OGs.
It's for the posers, for the
It
fucking
is.
posers.
It's for them people who say they're fat. And they haven't got a BMI of over 30.
What the fuck is a BMR?
Oh,
Were you muted this entire time?
me?
Yeah.
No, I'm just too focused on the game.
Oh, mate, get me in.
Ooh, little scratch on the head there.
I mean, I'd rather not, son, if I'm honest. I mean, I'm going to follow you. Too many. That damage in CC was fucking stupid.
Yeah.
Dun, 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 dun.
Death was nice and peaceful. Thanks for
Did you buy the new Marvel Rival Battle Pass?
Yes. Yes.
You remember last time you buy the Fortnite
It's completely
game
different.
pass? Eh?
Completely different.
Uh-huh.
I like playing Marvel Rivals. I don't like playing Fortnite.
Then why do you buy that one?
Because I wanted the Green Ranger, alright?
Do you get it?
No one played with me, no. Everyone left me.
Lol.
You fucking lol.
Is there any other way besides the Battle Pass to get that skin?
No, I will never have that skin now.
Am I going in?
I mean, I'm here for it.
Rumble as well.
No one else is here for it. I am going to warn you of that. But I went in with you.
You're a lad. You're a fucking lad, mate.
You went in and died instantly.
Yeah, but I got the kill. I got 2 kills.
And he went in.
And I went
That
in.
means life, really.
Yeah. Rumble didn't even ult, by the way.
That's pretty good.
There we go. I do a lot of damage.
Oh, just someone kill that fucking Trundle. How's he alive?
He must have ulted you.
I don't think he did.
He must have, because I thought he was dead, so I stopped hitting him.
Yeah, no, he did.
I was going to say. Oh, I did that damage to myself because of Trundle's Thorn Mail. Oh. Wow. Nice. I think Zed's going to try and come behind us. Oh no, you're on him.
Fucking on that stinky little bitch, mate.
I warned you. Oh, wait.
Kill the turret, mate. Get fucked, Trundle.
Get out me bush! God damn!
Let me live steal.
The fucking blind. Did anyone see the blind grab?
I did, mate. It was fantastic.
Can I go to hell? Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yes, Joe. I live. I tried to live.
Survive.
He's turned on me, Joe. He's turned on me. I rooted him, but Zed got me. Collector acquired.
What's Yoni fucking doing?
Nice!
You said that as Yoni went in and killed someone, Lynn.
Oh,
It's like you timed it.
I said it because I got 3 people.
Nice. Who are you? Who are you?
Jeff.
You nommed 3
Yeah,
people.
yeah.
My name is Jeff.
My name's Jeff. You get a free skin.
Barely able to go out.
Yeah. Joel, you've got to log into Marvel soon.
Yeah.
What?
Just so you get the free corporate Jeff skin.
Corporate Jeff, eh?
Yeah. Same as you, Luke.
Can you just log in on my thing? Because I'd have to install it again.
What? No, because I won't be able to log in on mine.
Fair enough.
Because it's linked to my email address that I don't have.
Oh, okay then. Oh, fair enough.
You underestimated my damage. You underestimated my damage, Gypsy.
You'll never get this.
Do not hurt me, Gypsy. I am only here for your tears.
Was it just me? What the fuck happened? Did a dead Scion kill fucking 4 cunts?
He did take 3/4 of my health.
Fucking. I took Zed's ult.
I did it for the rock.
I did it for the people. Look at Sion's heart stacks. 499.
Ooh.
How's he attacking that fast with no items?
That was my fucking ult as well.
I'm finally dead.
You'll have to kill me, Zed. Otherwise, I'll kill you all. Do not hurt me, Gypsy. I am only here for your tears.
Get a rift maker, you know. What the bloody hell is going on here?
Fucking hit me, cunt.
I could do a karma, stopping doing nearly half my health.
I hate like being Jeff and swallow people and I couldn't throw them into the pit and kill them.
Nah, it's awkward. It's awkward just standing there doing doing nothing.
Oh, someone kill that fucking cunt, mate.
Killable.
Who?
Sion.
Trundle's back on
Fucking full health.
That's
What's going on?
MMF forever.
I killed everyone else. And took the him.
I didn't. We had 3 of them.
I killed 3 of them. I killed Karma. I killed Zed. I killed Karma, and I killed Nico.
I had Sion and Trundle fucking chomping at me cock for half the fucking game.
That's only 2. I don't know if I want to.
Yeah, we killed some other cunt way before.
It might have been Karma then.
Yeah, you'll fucking get some karma, son.
Oh no.
I just dodged Karma's skill shot, and Zaya went, "Thanks for the dance." That's pretty bantery, isn't it?
Oh, that was a little underlay. That was a little.
It was, wasn't it?
Flashing into the room.
Mate, it was either do that or... Hi, me. On the top, that's me. Do I get rid of my boots and get IE?
Mate, I'm not fucking Sal Ren on the gates of fucking Fan Castle right now, mate. That's why I am defending the inhib.
Yeah, might as well, Trev. We're all fucking dying real quick, aren't we?
Or do I get Gwynso's?
You got Blade?
Yeah.
Don't know.
Shall I get IE or... Have I maxed out crit already?
How much? I don't know. You tell me. Who you got?
25, 50... 25, 50. I got 50. So would IE be good then, yeah?
You'd have 75, wouldn't you?
No, that means... No, that means I've got 90... 115.
Get the fuck out of base, man.
You're going to have to protect me then, because Trundle's going to be able to run me down like the dog I am. Oh god, I'm doing damage. Jesus.
Awesome.
Well,
Let's get it. Get the in here. Get the tower. I'm doing. I'm not even. Am I damaging the turret then?
I don't think so.
Fucking whale, mate. Ah, no.
Yeah, that's fair.
Oh.
Nice, yeah, no, nice job. How are you still alive?
I'm alive.
Fucking hell. Do you reckon Joel's got an S?
Oh, I don't think so, mate.
I hope not.
I don't think so.
Trev got the S.
Did I? I didn't even think I did that good.
Yeah. God damn, he did.
87,000k. I've done the worst.
Classic.
Same old Luke.
Jesus, yeah. Let's see.
Oh, I should get that fucking geezer before I spend all my essence, you know.
I got given him for free somehow. Because I didn't buy him and I've got him. Let me check I've got him actually.
Maybe it's like interest. Like, 'cause you had so much blue essence. Like
I've only,
interest was
I've only got 24 down. Yeah, I've got him. I've got him for free. Hi. Yeah, I've only got 24k now. From 159k to 24.
wonderful.
Are we ready?
Yep.
Yeah.
I've seen loads of Ark Raiders stuff, and I'm like, doesn't look that fun.
Well, it's alright, wasn't it?
Yeah, I'm just watching all the streamers play it. There's like faction wars going on between different streamers and stuff. I'm just like, meh. Everyone loves that.
I need that green.
Everyone loves that burnt peanut, and I'm just like,
Who?
burnt peanut.
Never heard of him.
He's a TikTok streamer.
Oh.
Who wants
There's a
his
little
gun?
Carthage there for you, Lukey.
Yeah, oh,
Oh, Zaheen.
do you want to swap so you want him?
No, fuck no. No, I don't want to, mate.
I bring the heat.
Shut up. You stupid little fucking dragon.
Oh, he's playing him.
Hi.
I need to make another song make you humming that one and like make you forget about this one.
Is that a baton in your pocket, or you just happy to see me? And he looks like he wants to chase me. Cop cuties, cute and unduty. Go ahead and lock me up. I do like that Arclight brand, but it looks like a Warframe skin.
When you sing on your mic, it sounds
Yeah.
like you're in the bathroom.
Good.
You just
The correct acoustics.
Oh, cop cuties, cute and booty. Oh wow, I wish I could do the Fred Durst, yeah. That's up there with Homer's scream.
I like the Tom and Jerry one.
What the Homer's scream will forever be my favourite sound effect I'll never be able to do.
I believe, mate. I believe you can do it.
It's like
You should just do it all the time on stream until you master it.
that is how you learn it. That's how I learned Lewis's fucking water drop. I just kept doing it because it pissed me off because I couldn't do it, and he kept doing it.
Well, there you go. All you need to do is just scream all the time like Homer.
Relentless persistence. I had Simpson, Homer Simpson. He's the greatest guy in history. From the town of Springfield, he's about to hit a chestnut tree. He screams. I can't do it. I can't go that high when I scream. Yeah, bow bow. Give him the smolder. Ah, Zack Ryder's music hitting the other day, Luke, was such a fucking nostalgia trip.
Yeah, you sent me the thing.
Yeah.
Didn't you?
He's Matt Cardona now. Like, he's like a fucking badass heel. He's really fun to watch, and he just fucking rinses people. When I fucking heard that, woo woo woo, I was like, that's fucking nuts. The first internet wrestler. Also, Logan Paul turned on CM Punk in the same night he became friends with him. The Vision was attacking CM Punk, and they attacked Logan Paul earlier. Even though Logan Paul was like, nah, I'm not a good guy, I'm staying out of it, but they attacked him anyway. So he came down looking like he was going to help him. He put the brass knucks on, they stood side by side, and then he turned and just fucking clocked CM Punk straight in the face. I was like, I love him as a baddie so much. But
I fucking can't stand CM Punk.
I can't stand CM Punk. I'm glad it's not just me. But
The fact that he fucking was mouthing off saying he was going to be really good at MMA and he got the fucking shit kicked out of him.
By just shit people as well.
Yeah, exactly.
I wonder if he tries to talk to Brock.
Huh?
I wonder if he tries to talk to Brock about it.
Oh, that'd be crazy.
It would, wouldn't it? I can't imagine Brock listening to him in any way, shape, or form.
I know his daughter beat a lot of people up, but I reckon she could take CM Punk.
Well, you mean the Lesnar regen?
The Lesnar regen.
Lesnar regen, yeah. Lesnar's daughter looks like Brock Lesnar. Luke.
Yeah, in a fucking wig, innit?
Yeah.
AP. D.
But
I had a lot of AP then.
4 APs and Quinn.
yeah, he did that, Luke, and afterwards he was like, Logan Paul was like talking to the camera, and he was like, "But I'm the Maverick. I don't team up, but I guess I'm joining the team. I'm joining Vision," and I'm just like, he's gonna fucking turn on the Vision. He's gonna fuck over the Vision, but he's not gonna be a goodie at the same time. And I'm like, that's such a good hallmark of a good heel. Just doing whatever the fuck you want.
Yeah.
And like his Wednesday vlogs, he vlogs when he's at WWE. So the entire vlog, Luke, he's the same character. It's so good to watch.
Flash already. It's juicy. I suppose Twister could go AD, couldn't he? Oh, but he's not, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah, he's not one of our breed. Yeah, bow bow. Lynn, can you ban that person, please? If you're not in mid game.
Oh, I was trying to, but it already disappeared. I don't get it.
Alright, it might work when I did it then. He's not disappeared on mine, he's still there. There we go.
Oh.
I can get arrested by the study of a cop.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah, Quinn will absolutely decimate you, Joel. If they play around Quinn, this is going to be a long night for us.
Well, I think we're gonna win because I mean, I'm just gonna get bodied if I go in, and no one's following.
I mean, when I've got my ult, we'll talk. And that fucking Zaheen
No,
should.
but you wouldn't follow though. But he's. I mean, I just went in. They were fucking nowhere to be seen.
Not gonna wow my norm world, brother.
There's one lane.
I don't know why you expect anything different. You saw some of my games, mate. No, not gotcha. Fuck you. That brand did so much damage to you before you went.
Yeah.
He like did half your health.
I don't think I've hit someone yet.
He did half your health as you fucking went underwater. That's crazy work. Yeah, bow bow. Suck a dick. So he went in with the ADC. It does make me feel weird that he's literally got Aatrox's passive.
Yeah, it's weird, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. It's like, why rework it?
It's weird, I just had deja vu. I feel like we had this conversation before.
We probably did. We probably thought it was weird then, in that conversation too. Oh, damn it, Luke.
Oh! The Queen.
Shut up, Sahed. Oh no, I fell already.
Oh, we've got J4.
Yep.
Who's gone collector first? Ah, okay.
Do you see anything going up there?
Or don't go in the tunnel.
I died so fucking quick then, I don't think they had a fucking choice.
Nice.
Oh, I hope you weren't nice. Then I'd feel bad.
I generally think my damage this game will be like 400. Not K, just like 400.
400k, mate. Yes.
Or just 400.
A Luden's prop killed me. Fuck's sake, like.
Oh, minion blocks. Might get Phantom Dancer.
Do it.
Fucking minions.
I support it.
I'll just...
Rest in peace. Oh. Hey. That hurt. I can't get near anybody.
Yes, I don't give a fuck about it.
Rough on the teams, isn't it? Oh, Cat has gone hard still. I wonder why she was hard to fucking kill.
Yeah, she's doing jokes damage as well. That's what makes that worse.
Yeah.
She's going AD as well. We've got Tia, man.
Why hit me then?
Luxol.
No, it didn't hit me. Was that a Luden's bro? That must have been. Fucking did well. I walked right into a card. Slapped me straight in the teeth.
Slap me.
It slapped me. How is she tanking us all? Jarvan going full damage. That's what we need. He's scary. Bro, I need to get something to fucking hurt her. Blade. Where are we? There we are. Yeah, she's going full AD.
Oh shit.
Why are they just targeting me? Fuck
They
did I
love
do?
you. They love you.
Oh fuck! I was 6 and 8.
How's it looking now?
6 and 9.
Sweet.
Oh.
Oh no.
I'm gonna finish the Bear season 4.
Okay. Do it. I dare you.
I'm almost done. Like 2 episodes left.
Is it worth watching?
Kind of boring this season.
Yeah, that's why I didn't continue it. It died to me in season 3. We do need to do Dan to Dan though. We need to tell Luke how weird it is.
Pervy as fuck, innit?
I love it, mate. It's so funny. Talking about twisting off wieners and stuff.
Yeah, I watched the first one.
There's loads of anime I've got to watch. I haven't watched any in months. How about you just fuck off, yeah? Bitch. Why do they want me? I don't do damage at the moment.
Easy target.
No, I'm not though. I'm literally behind four other characters.
Oh, like every time I glance at your stream, you guys are always in low health and they just...
What are you trying to say?
You guys look like you're gonna lose.
Oh, we are gonna lose.
Nonsense,
there's no
poopy
way that-
pants. Oh god. That little fucker.
What's that character?
Which one?
They're gonna shoot whole straight laser.
Oh, that's Lux.
That looking cool.
That's my cat. That's her there. She's either a mid laner or a support. I don't like playing with her if she's support.
Eh?
Oh, I felt like I can't doing that.
I'm glad.
That was fucking disgusting. Kill me. Fucking cleanse myself with that sin. That was fucking disgusting. Fucking what, still got.
I bet Zahan's wondering why he's not tanky.
I'd
At least I didn't end up in the tree again.
I don't see why I bother buying fucking Arsenal. I'm not alive for 3 seconds in a fight to get a kill. To like stack it.
Understandable, mate.
It was my second item before boots and I've won 47 stacks.
That is unfortunate.
I might just sell it and go Warmogs.
You should. I think that's better. That's a good choice.
Cool. You have that, you stinky bitch. No!
I pressed my ult and it didn't go off until like I died. The fuck is that about? I look.
Fuck.
Ben,
That was so
Is that
after. I
late
can't have been
or
on
what?
fire. Fucking shithouse.
You'll see that on my VOD. I hit R
Yeah, I saw it.
and started walking away, and I was like, why didn't I ult? I would have killed Brand. So I tapped it if I can again. Point. I'm glad you saw it, Lynn, and I'm not fucking going crazy.
You want a clip?
No, it's fine.
Nah, she's just being supportive, mate.
She is that kind of person. She is supportive AF.
You're waffling. Oh! There we go.
I never waffle, mate.
Oh no.
He pings, he's going in. Nice one. Yeah. I'm glad he actually said that. Oh, okay.
He only said that because I said my bad. Otherwise, he would never have said that. Yeah, well, it was 3v5, mate. That's why I was backing off.
Well, you guys cannot go back to hill.
No, not in this game mode.
I might go back to the Amazon basket for that robe.
That toaster, mate. Just chuck it on in.
Don't even fucking have one. Would need literally next day. Black Friday special.
Black Friday special.
Oh, I haven't seen if there's any deals on.
I've only seen ones for watches, mate, as if they targeted me with ads. Like the Seiko Monster I want is reduced from 550 to 350. I'm like, I'm not fucking nah. I don't. That's a fucking. That's 200 quid off. It's 200 quid off, and I'm like, nah, you can't tempt me with that shit.
I'm baffled.
You did more damage to me. I was just dead the entire time, mate.
Mate, in 2 items, I hit one person within 3 seconds that gets that art still. How does that work?
Mate, you had Thorn Mail and fucking Sunfire. Sunfire. Sunfire.
A son of fire. The monkey. Untouchable. Trendo setter.
On fire. Oh, I've got one. I've got a Luke's character. Look, us.
you got, yeah.
Swap.
You're well on it, lets me.
Oh, I thought he had a little Zara. Looks like a little Zara, doesn't he?
Oh yeah, I do actually. Yoink.
I don't know where to go. If you want to go tank, I'll go ADC, Joe. I don't mind.
Well, you want to go Misfortune, and we need.
I'm not going to go Misfortune.
Always take blood or gold.
Oh, okay.
But if you insist, I'll go Misfortune.
Don't know if that's a good idea. Meow Kai though, I'm gonna look cute af when I get fucking died 17 times.
Did you get the rest of the promos?
No, because I keep fucking looking through 'em and I get to the same point and the fucking game starts.
I don't know what to say, mate.
You're sorry, and then we can move on from there.
I think it's too late to say sorry.
Fucking Diamond Caitlyn, I think. What was that plat?
I'm glad you knew exactly why I said that, Joe. It looks, I don't know, Diamond.
What's that? Caitlyn?
They're a top player.
So, Caitlyn?
Potato power. Untouchable. Abyssal. What does Abyssal mean? Earn progress from challenges in Aram. Aram champion. Aram god. We've got an Aram god on our team.
I'm in chat.
Graceful Phoenix Seraphim. Looks like her face is done with AI.
Does, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you look at all the other splashes, right?
What's that?
You look at all the rest of the splashes that look fucking sussy back at that.
Don't like that. AD, AP, AD, AP, AD. They've actually got a pretty filth team. Actually, just looking at it.
Yeah, Seraphim, Lulu, Trundle, and Caitlyn. And the fucking dog. Gotta pet that dog!
Thornmail.
Game Pass is going up from $8.99 to $14.99.
Is it?
Yeah.
Fucking hell.
It's a jump.
What are they fucking justifying that for?
Fuck knows.
Because, well, to be fair, they're literally putting like AAA title games fresh off onto it.
I haven't seen one AAA title game on there, mate.
Call of Duty Black.
They're all fucking reskins of old games.
Well, I know, but they're technically AAAs, aren't they?
Mate, the fact that I haven't
That
got...
Expedition game on there.
That got Game of the Year, and I played that and went, meh.
I loved it.
Yeah, I thought you two would be two people who would love it.
It was so good.
Well, I'm just going to wait until I get a PC to actually enjoy it, because playing on fucking 144 pixels probably ain't the best way to do it.
It's true, mate. But you're never going to get a PC to enjoy it, so...
You know, I might as well just get it and say shit.
Exactly. You're going to get the Valve Cube.
Nah.
Linus Tech Tips said stuff about it being expensive. And someone in the comments went, this motherfucker charges $60 for a screwdriver.
Yeah. Yeah, not even fucking Weira do that.
Why do they have so much poke?
I don't know, it's fucking tragic though, isn't it?
Nice.
Do I already have a Chroma? I think I've already got a Maokai Chroma.
Why
It's
wear
like
it?
normal skin. It's a little upset tiger.
No, you're right. That is a chroma.
Oh, hell yeah, I've already got one. I already got one.
That dog's in that bush. The dog's in that bush.
Can I pet that dog?
Can I pet that dog?
Can I Pet that dog.
Your favourite person?
Potato Power's getting their fucking. Oh, I can't say that.
Your favourite person in wrestling, Joel, would be Braun Breaker.
Braun Breaker.
Because he's known as the big dog. When he comes out, everyone goes. Roar, 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 roar.
Oh yeah. What
Hey,
a fucking
hey.
boy.
And he talks like this because he's Rick Steiner's son. And he sounds exactly like Rick Steiner. I fucking love it. He's all whiny. Rick Steiner.
The chef.
No, the wrestler, Steiner brothers.
Fucking chef.
I ignored it. I ignored his fucking autism then.
I ignores it, sir.
He did it. He did it on purpose, Luke. Don't fucking play up to it.
I ignores it.
He wouldn't know who Scott Steiner is.
Yeah, he told me the other
I
day.
used to play against him in SmackDown, mate. Little chainmail number. SmackDown 98, mate. Fucking great game. Used to beat the fuck out of China all the time because she was like one of the weakest characters. Which sounds mad to say now. And that is a wrestler, Lynn.
he said,
Realise what I said?
he said he used to beat the fuck out of China all the time. And he was like, that was a wrestler.
Banned.
Nothing to do with her name.
Can we get some Malphite
No,
action
don't ban me,
so I can press R?
Well, if they group up,
If they group up.
should I just fucking up?
I mean, you could.
Yeah.
Should I just fucking up?
I mean, before I get poked down and die, preferably. But yeah,
Okay.
let's fucking go.
Nice fucking
Oh,
old,
that's
mate.
all is cool.
Did you see what Seraphine fucking did?
So
Nah.
you fucking shit.
As soon as I ulted, she knocked me up. As soon as.
Oh god.
Like there was no wait. It was just. Were you referring to my ultimate, Lynn?
The fox one.
Fox one?
Looks like fox.
Me, mate.
Who?
Yeah.
Well, this one.
No, the who someone just used the
All the
five
cats.
tails.
All the cats coming out.
Oh, that's cat. Okay.
Yeah, that's Meowkai.
I thought that's fox. Okay.
No, it's because they're wearing his onesie.
I've got a little fox onesie on.
He's a tree with a fox onesie on. Well, a cat onesie on.
And I'll play with yarn. Hello.
So that's a stun or what? Like
It's a root, yeah.
trap.
Yeah, it knocks everyone down.
Oh, what?
The fact that it
I
goes,
was just playing with the yarn.
the fact that it goes meow 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 meow, and you're doing it as well. It's quite funny.
Oh, does it?
Yeah, I zoomed right in.
Man, I'm just trying to enjoy my yarn.
21 seconds before I can get knocked out my O again.
21 seconds to go. I've got 15 seconds.
If you like them, we got 21 seconds before. You gotta go. We got 21 seconds. No, we got 21 seconds. Go.
Now? No, I'm just going to go in. Die.
Oh, okay.
What the fuck is going on here? Breakfast.
Breakfast. Bankai. Shata. Senpon Sukura. Grimdo Jagajax.
Well, I'm fucking ready for a little fucking count army, mate.
By cow, he means Catlin. It's hard enough you trying to translate what we're saying anyway when he's saying fucking autistic shit like that. And the fact that you said
Milk baby, let's go! No!
she got me the instant I pressed it.
Fucking You need to uninstall this fucking game, mate.
It went on cooldown on the instant.
You're literally garb, mate. Never play Miss Fortune again. Never fucking pick up this champ again, man. It's fucking hard to watch.
It's fucking hard to play.
Trolling? Are you fucking trolling?
I can't believe that.
Can't wait to see how you fuck up your ult next time. You'll just start moving. You'll just give up.
Yeah, I just
attack move.
I do think Miss Fortune is literally one of the worst ADCs in the game.
Mate, you always pick her.
I don't. I always regret it.
You still pick her?
That's because it's her or Severe.
Nah, only this turn.
I wouldn't pick her over anyone else.
Yeah, you would.
Name one.
Well, you picked her over Severe and Kled today.
That's over Severe. We're on about ADCs. Oh, bye, Luke.
Fucking anyone.
Fucking hell.
We are the support. We are the support, yeah. We are the support, yeah.
Potatoes.
Don't try and touch my carrot, you're getting peeled off. Oh, we got a karma.
Oh.
He's probably thinking, have we got a misfortune?
What's she been doing?
He hasn't seen you all yet.
What's she been doing?
Don't know, mate.
Don't know. I haven't seen an Empower Q.
I haven't
So
seen.
can't
That's what I'm
fault
saying.
myself.
I haven't been shielded. Ah,
We're not.
Isn't it normal if like it's a tank and it almost looks bigger, or like you grow bigger because
you grow bigger. You grow bigger because you got more health.
And with certain items as well.
Oh, let's just
It
fucking
also
go.
makes you become an easy target, right? Like
Yeah, yeah. You're supposed to. You're supposed to be to block shots and stuff like that.
I'm just fucking on my own again.
You are, mate. I'm dead. I can't go in and die with you.
It's fucking outrageous. Thanks for the shield, Karma. Thanks for the fucking shield, lad.
Yeah, the idea for the tank, Lynn, is to basically take all the damage you can to let your little squishies do their job.
Except one of my squishies has fucking thrown his Arky in the bin.
No, the Arky's working. The Arky's working. Fuck you, Lynn. The Arky's working. It's just that people are taking steps to stop me from using my Arky.
No, like down northern, mate.
Arky. Lynn was Caitlin the other day, right? And these people kept getting away from us. I was like fucking Trick. Press R! Press R! Then I looked down and realised she hadn't even gotten it yet. I was like, are you fucking serious?
you just forgot to upgrade that one.
It's literally your most important ability.
I ain't got me out yet, so.
It's okay, mate. A couple of seconds. I'll see it.
Oh,
Well, you can actually see what ability I got.
Yeah. I got my art off! Yeah! Yeah, so you see here, Lynn. See the little green orbs above their head? Over here.
Oh,
That means they have their ultimate.
so that's the R. That only the R can show.
Yeah.
Okay.
Don't gonna stop my carry, you're getting peeled off. SUPPORT. That was a banger when that came out, Joel.
It's a fucking tune, mate, to be fair.
Because we
Better
are the
than the original.
support. It was fucking way better. We are the support, yeah. We are the support, yeah. Don't try to touch my carry, you're getting peeled off.
Oh.
You sound like that fucking fish. Oh.
Eating the carrot.
Oh. No, the fucking pufferfish. Oh.
Yeah, he's eating a carrot.
Oh, is he?
Yeah.
I did not know that. Don't try to touch my carrot.
Can I pet that dog?
Can I pet that dog? I see a thing. I stopped myself from talking on Twitter to people about football. But I saw someone saying how Liverpool
Stop talking to people on Twitter.
mate, every day. Someone posted a picture of Luis Diaz saying how Liverpool got rid of the best left winger in the world. I had to comment on it. I goes, hang on a fucking minute. Whoever the best winger is in the world in the fucking Bundesliga is not the best winger in the world in the Premiership, given stated facts that he couldn't do fuck all in the Premiership.
What was the rebuttal?
Nothing.
Oh my god.
Why are you dying like you got no tank?
Yeah, I know.
He just got fucking melted, mate. But Trundle's like literally unkillable, and he's a level below you.
I know. I just don't get it. We've got the same items. If anything, I'm further along.
You've got dangerous eyes. I like that. Your turret has been destroyed.
Oh no.
What have you done? Oh, come on, Joe!
Yes! The carry's here! The carry is here!
He is! Look at him go! Trundle's literally... I have damage, Joe! Yes! Do not go for me, Gypsy. I only want your tears. Do not hurt me, Gypsy. Don't try to touch my carrier. You can't... see that cue coming a mile off, poo-poo. Fucking get that dog! Owie. No, not closer to me. He's ulted you, Joe.
I've Kettons. Oh, come here, Christian.
Don't try to touch my carrier. We're getting peeled off. And this is why League's so fun, Lynn. This has been back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. We're gonna lose, but it's fun.
I find it like annoying.
Oh, it is annoying.
Are you? Yeah.
Yeah, but it's annoying for you, and you don't know what you're looking at. You imagine what it's like for us three. We know exactly what we're looking at, and it's hell.
You guys are trying to avoid getting attacked at the same time trying to attack, but like the aiming is not always hitting them. It's like...
Alright, just tell us we don't hit skill shots.
Wow.
No, I mean
Fucking
like...
brutal.
It's so hard to attack, like actually hitting them.
That's because their team composition is poke. And we haven't got poke. We've got a Karma and a Lux who don't seem to be doing anything.
We've got fucking poke, bro.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I just thought we got a Karma and a Lux, and I stopped saying stuff. I was like, we do have poke.
Fucking Zara Misfortune as well. We've got fucking poke, son.
Oh yeah? What am I going to poke with?
Yeti.
My Yeti?
Yeti.
Oh no.
Where was my tank to block it?
On the upper side of the map, mate. Get near me.
Brother. Brother. You didn't even try.
I was on the other side of the inhib. There's 4 squishy guns. I can't stay by everyone if you split up. I need everyone to group up and make it easy for them. Oh, you know I'm fucking going in.
Don't go in now.
I'm fucking going in.
No, Joe, there's no one. There's no one!
Again.
I'm coming!
Get him. Get him. Get him.
You've got dangerous eyes.
I got that
This is
fuck.
fucking easy.
I got that serpent fang, so whoever gets shields now takes more damage. Get fucked. I'm gonna
Maybe
run.
Karma's putting those shields on them because I ain't fucking seen her use it on one of us yet.
Yeah.
That Nefari keeps trying to kill me.
Absolute nefarious activities.
It
going
is,
on right
mate.
now.
That was so bad. Like I started going along with you, but I couldn't.
Appears without, mate.
Ah!
See that? No, I don't want to hear any fucking crying now.
You're so squishy.
How's a dog just kill 4 people, mate?
Seraphim charmed 4 of us. One of us
He's 19.
might have been doing their role at the time.
He's 19 kills.
Yeah, I think he's killed me 11 times.
You died 11 times.
That's my point.
The fact that people died more than that. No.
Yeah, yeah,
Oh my god, you come out and die.
yeah. The Lulu shields.
Yeah, have that though. Oh, I didn't even get the kill. Yes. Come on.
Do you miss Malphite's old ult?
Malphite's?
Maokai's.
No, because that was fucking shit.
What, the damage
What
reduction?
was it? I can't remember.
The damage
Oh,
reduction.
damage reduction AoE and then it done a fucking
Then it popped.
explosion after.
Yeah, that was fucking well good.
Shit, mate.
I loved it.
There's a reason it fucking went.
Yeah, because the devs aren't freak anymore building fucking BT on Blitzcrank. BTIE on Blitzcrank. That's what Joel got the builds from. Freak.
Alright.
Trinity Force on fucking everyone.
Yeah. Did you watch the freak video I sent you?
I did, yeah.
What was he wearing?
I don't know. But I'm all about it. I don't mind a bit of outrageous clobber every now and then.
Snail says he heard a rumour that only trans people play League of Legends at 9:50. So I'm glad it's 9:59.
Oh, that's fair.
Oh my god, the noise! A tirade!
Who dead? Yeah, I think this is it, boys.
Lily, your background noise. It sounds like you're in a bath.
Oh, sorry.
You're in a bath, sat on a washing machine with a fan on you.
I can't hear any background noise.
No, I just woke up.
It does sound like you just woke up.
Yeah, literally.
I'm blaming this turgid fucking fortune, that.
I'm blaming this Maokai.
Oh yeah, what have I done?
Couldn't fucking block a skill
Been
shot.
too fucking decent.
I don't think you can hear the background noise. What do you mean?
No, I
I
can't.
have,
Anything.
I can't anymore. Oh, at least I had damage, Joe. That's what matters.
I bloody hope so. Sir.
I couldn't do anything, alright?
Alright, that's me,
Guess we've
boys.
got
I'm
game
out.
over.
Fuck this shit, he's out. Too loud, bud.
He's had enough.
He's had enough. Oh, God, I'm tired.
I've literally just got a Zaheen fucking champion shard.
You didn't buy them already, did you?
Yeah, of course I bought already.
That's a fucking nightmare, that is. Told me to catch my career, we're getting drilled off. SUPPORT.
PP.
PP? Don't say that word around it. Tommy.
BP.
PP, yeah.
Oh, PP.
So you're the one who just said it.
No, he said it.
I said BP.
Did you? I thought you said I got PP on the brain.
Think about me fucking PP, mate.
That's your mind too dirty.
My mind too dirty.
That's dirty.
For making the plays. You say no vision, GG! I like to say it's like an over-exaggeration of players in the league, but it isn't.
Oh, mate, you can get a little fucking pug out on pool party. Oh, Citron.
I had to listen to it, so it's in my head. I've been up since 5 a.m.
Same.
Actual same or just rage bait same?
No, same.
Oh. What were you
You
doing?
guys
at 5
don't
a.m.?
sleep.
Oh, we sleep.
Yeah, like.
Flabby doesn't wake up till 12:30 on the weekends. Like me and Luke are talking in our chat at 9 a.m. and we were like, yeah, he ain't up yet. He's not gonna be up for a few hours.
Yeah.
Wiki is supposed to sleep late.
Do not sleep. Do not defend him.
No. Well, as a oversleeping person, I support that.
Yeah.
You shut up as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It sounds so weak
yeah.
supporting.
Yeah, fuck you, Buckles. SUPPORT. Oh, I'd love to have heard anything you just said.
Yeah, I could hear it.
Lynn, you're about to see a Thresh pro. Thresh is the person who Flabby Cats is, and out of all of our friend group, he is the best Thresh.
Oh, you're being too kind there.
That's the champion name.
Yeah, his name's Thresh here. Look. Yeah, he's the support that throws a hook and stuff, and he's often typoed called Tresh, so we call him Tresh.
Trash.
Have you seen?
Have you seen their fucking team?
I haven't, mate. Do we have a tank? I haven't seen anyone in this game. Mate.
I'm just gonna wait for you to see their team.
Hey.
You can always make the fire as a tank.
Yeah. Something as a tank. Cool.
I said you can always make the fighter as the tank.
Yeah. Who's the fighter?
Oh,
You just talking waffle. You just waffling. Bonk.
I'm just
Still set to be the tank is what I believe.
hold on. I'm just playing League.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
That's what I thought to say.
You know that it's true. Yeah. Oh, that's why I keep missing my Q. I keep getting fucking silenced.
Yeah.
Yeah. Bonk. There you go, Ash. You've been watching them things I've been sending you, Joe, when they're Cho'Gath going, I'm Cho'Gath.
Oh, what, Insta?
Yeah.
I normally wait for ages, and then I'll just watch them while on the
You
toilet.
just spend all night watching them because I said Connor's the fucking worst.
Yeah, but Connor's a complete... You know what a Connor vid is.
I don't know, mate. He's same as mine at times.
It tends to just be closeted... No, I can't say that. I love fire on that one.
Yeah, I can drag them towards me, yeah.
But you instead you get dragged into the whole team and get killed.
No, I walked into their team. Willingly.
Why?
Because I tried to kill someone.
Oh.
Yeah, basically, Joel, there's one of Cho'Gath going, I'm Cho'Gath, I'm going to walk around now. And he's just walking. Yeah, there's one of Trundle. There's one of Mordekaiser.
The Trundle one, I think, is the one you sent, maybe.
Yeah, some of them are funny. I hate them because they're funny. Oh, he's hit another hook, guys. Is there anything this guy can't do?
Yeah, survive.
Who is silencing me? Fucking Cho'Gath.
What's that?
So, Lynn, if you see me dying while not doing anything, it's because the big fucker on their team is pressing W, and his W silences everyone, so I can't do anything.
When it's silent, you mean you got stung, you cannot use your...
It's kind of a stun.
There's something he cannot do. There is something he can't do.
Yeah, so if I get silence, Lynn, I can't activate any abilities.
Oh,
Does he tell me you play League too?
She has done.
I played it before.
I didn't even know Yi was there.
I played it before, and I do play a lot of MOBA games.
Do you play Mobile
Okay,
Legends?
you play League on mobile?
Not League. You can play League's Wild Rift.
Yeah.
It's called Wild Rift. And there's also Mobile Legends, which has been out much longer. I played that for a while, but that was that was torture. I've got big sausage hands, so playing that was was tough.
It's such a torture to learn the rotations.
No, that's easy because literally every ability's been on League, so I just literally go, oh, that's like this ability.
No.
That's like this ability.
It was a torture because I was the roam.
Jungle. You were jungle.
No.
You were jungle. Or support.
That's even worse.
You were support then.
Yeah, I was support. Yeah, I was the roam. Yeah.
Yeah.
Roaming. I keep roaming.
Do not take any of these names in, Lynn. Do not cry for me, Gypsy. I am here for your tears. Don't let Hitomi distract you with other names for things.
No idea what you guys talking about, so...
Do you know how long it took me to call Marvel heroes actual heroes? And not champions?
A week?
I still do it now.
A week? That's okay.
She's just...
How do I know? You did play this game for ages.
Yeah, I know, but every hero is a champ. But every champ is not a hero.
Whatever.
I'm a philosopher. I'm a philosopher. Every hero is a champ, but not every champ is a hero.
That's fucking deep, bro.
Right?
Yeah. Damn.
Don't need to catch my car and you're getting peeled off. S-U-B-B-O-R-T.
please.
I'm gonna sleep again.
Okay, thank you for
Still
coming in.
Good night.
Now get out of here.
I
Get out of here. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. I need to drop my carry, we're getting peeled off.
what time is it for her?
Same time for you.
Oh.
What are you saying? You're on the same.
God. She's sleepy. She's asking me, so I thought it's like maybe midnight or something.
No. SUPPORT. Don't try to touch my carrot. Oh, he's feeling thirsty. He got her.
I'm feeling thirsty.
Oh my god. I wish I didn't pick Maud.
Yeah, you had a fucking stinky one there. Oh, fuck, got you on.
I thought you'd be going AD, the amount you're hitting.
I can't, mate. I'd be fucking dead. I'm dying as a tank. I will be going like Hydra and stuff once I get a bit of resistance. Fucking wait.
Yeah, he took her out of my grab.
Oh, fucking
I did something. Yeah. Don't need to touch my carry.
Oh.
Get him peeled off. Right, once I've got Rift Maker, mate, I'm going a bit of tanky wanky.
Oh, a little cheeky one.
Yeah, I've got Rile Eyes and getting Rift Maker at the same time.
Who the fuck are you? Oh, Maud. Who are ya? Who are ya?
Hit to me. I tried stealing that with a bonk.
You little fucking...
We just need to get Lynn addicted to this, Joe, and then we've got our own little. We've got our own AliExpress faker.
What do you mean?
Well, I can't call you faker. Faker's Korean, so I can't call you that.
I mean, you know, Uzi and that.
That should be a Mad Life.
Mad Life. He was,
Support.
Oh, no. You can't say that.
He was support. Are you thinking of Afro Moon?
What?
Are you thinking of Afro Moon?
Well, those two fucking different people.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Oh, fuck all about Afro, boo.
Why?
A few months to actually can like help.
It's gonna take longer than that. It's gonna take way longer than that.
A few months?
Yeah.
Longer than that? Damn.
Yeah, at least. It's gonna take a few months for you to even be able to play Aram properly.
What's Aram?
This.
Like game mode?
This game mode.
Oh. Yeah, we don't get the dodging and then the try to attack.
Well, you want to
You got
dodge.
to dodge stuff from Marvel, wouldn't you?
Yeah, you have, but
But Marvel, you don't need to dodge like this.
You do?
Not really.
No, you do. Just because you don't doesn't mean you don't have to. Because you usually have me peeling for you the entire time, even though you're the support. Yeah, she forgets that I'm tank or a DPS that protects her.
Oh, I'm sorry. Am I fucking mad life, bro? I'm mad life. What is this?
I don't know, mate. What's he like?
Oh, that's good.
Invisible Q hook. I either need a fucking raise or putting down, mate, because I need to go. Oh no. Can we get his turret?
I juked Ari's charm with your lantern.
Oh, I was about to say, I'm not long for this world, Trev.
Same, mate. I was exactly the same.
See, it's Titanic next. I have to go it.
You do. You do have to go. Don't try to touch my carry, we're getting peeled off. SUPPORT. It's gotten to the point, Joel, that if I play Marvel by myself, I forget that Lynn's not always healing me. So I'll like overextend.
In Marvel?
Yeah, I'll overextend expecting her to be there, but she's not.
Well, I try to, but...
No, I'm on about when I play by myself.
Ah.
Come on,
Just rush for the inhib.
oh yeah, I'm Mordekaiser and you're telling me to rush. You're faster than me, brother.
I watched a streamer, he's really good at Namor the other day. It made me really want to play Namor again.
See, that's why I think you'll be fine at League, because if you watch the people play League, it's the same thing.
I still don't understand what they're doing, so I'm just like not really interested in watching.
And that's because you don't watch.
I watch you play, but like
Yeah.
it's confusing all the time.
Yeah, I got when I'm
Just
playing.
like-
Well, you best to watch better people.
Wow.
The biggest problem for me right now is like I'm not used to the moving.
She hates right click move. She hates right click move.
Why are they changing it to WASD?
There's going to be an option you can take, yeah.
It's going to be so broke being able to do that.
With ADC, yeah, 100%.
See that guy that was attacking the tower?
Yep.
What the fuck happened? Oh, you took him.
Ooh, what happened here?
That's Mordekaiser's ult. He takes him for a 1v1.
Oh.
Ah.
Oh, that's true.
Did I kill all of them? I got a quadra then.
Did you?
Yeah, unofficial.
Oh, you didn't kill all of them then if you only got the quadra.
I'm not sure. Why have I got a Porra hat?
I don't know, I had it. I was on my character for a bit. That was handy.
That was, wasn't it? That was perfect timing.
Nice of it. Nice.
Took her
We
away to the
got her.
Shadow Realm.
I'm not afraid anymore.
You hearing me? I'm not afraid anymore. Support. Because I sang that song, Joel, it channeled Thresh.
It did, mate. That's why we won.
I summoned him, exactly.
If you weren't constantly singing that song, we wouldn't have won.
I got an A- for that performance on Maud. Are you joking?
Got A+. That performance, not least damage, bro.
That's what I mean. That's what I mean. I'm not saying it was good. That's what I mean. I got an A.
Oh. Fucking hell.
Support.
And Nico, I saw her use one like good ult on a Quadra on her own.
Yeah.
That was it.
Yeah.
She didn't get any kills, but it was a good ult.
Support. Oh, I did keep saying PP, didn't I? Right, go check out the Emporium, Joel, before I start it.
The Emporium. I've got quest. Oh no, Syndicate Vein. That's a legendary skit.
Syndicate Vein. I've not seen it.
I might have to fucking. I
Have
might
you
just make that permy. I'm gonna upgrade that.
have you seen Zaheen's other skin?
Have you seen?
It looks like
No.
Zhao Yun.
What do you want? Zhao Yun, didn't he saved Leah-based son, didn't he? At the
Yeah,
at some point.
he one of the 5 tigers, isn't he? Yeah.
Yeah, he is, yeah, one of the
Yeah.
5 generals. What geezer? Was Pang Tong one of them?
That rain shepherd Tristana is cute as fuck.
Rain Shepherd.
Mm-hmm. That floral Fatalis Lissandra is fucking cool.
It's fucking class, isn't it?
Yeah.
The pugs look like Mesut Ozil.
The same as floral Fatalis Soraka. That's fucking cool as well.
They're like evil Elderwoods. I like it.
Yeah. Oh my god, Brick Toy Koki is fucking phenomenal.
Is he on a ducky, bro, or a chicken?
He's on a chicken, mate. Spirit Blossom Springs Ari. Oh, Spirit Blossom Springs set. What the fuck is that Teemo skin? Spirit Blossom's Teemo is ridiculous.
I'll go Cat's Eye.
Ink Shadow Pike. Stargazer Vex looks
Oh
like...
my god.
What?
Space Groove Blitz and Crank Rose Quartz. There's like a little fucking white cat in there.
That's cool.
Oh mate.
Have you seen Spirit Blossom Bard?
Oh, that looks sick. Oh, he's got a little like a little flower.
It's fucking cool. That looks like
looks like
Viego.
Zelda or something.
That looks like a fucking chibi Viego. Cat in the Box Shaco looks so fucking good, you know.
Oh, Sugar Rush.
This is why this game is so annoying. What?
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 What do you get?
Huh?
Joe.
Hello. Glizzy. Excuse me.
The Glizzy Neferi.
That's fucking class.
That's fucking wild. Got the Clogfather. There's so many good skins. Masked Justice Lucian looks pretty fucking good, and Masked Justice Senna superheroes. Masked Justice Yone. Oh, that's fucking sick as well. Dumplings, Darlings, and Moo Moo. That's class. Luke shouting one more game. Chosen Wolf Pantheon. That looks fucking sick too. There's too many good skins. Dark Sky Cut. Dark Star Kaiser.
I've checked out the Emporium.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Queen.
There's a Janitor Thresh.
I tend to know. I basically either go for the pink, the black, or the blue skins.
I go
Like
for the
blue.
white, pink, or purple.
That'll be fucking cute.
The fucking Empyrean skins, splash arts are so cool. In game, they're quite meh.
Don't know. They look a bit.
Choo Choo.
Oh my god.
Cheddar Chief Twitch.
Oh yeah, I see that.
What were you looking at?
I was looking at the obsidian, the choo choo.
It's class, isn't
Like
it?
it's fake. It looks like a fucking raccoon thing or something.
Yeah. Right, Luke's scouting one more game.
If you can give another one more game in chat, I'll
He already has.
we'll do one.
He already has.
Nah, but like another though.
He's done two.
Yeah, but like another though.
Oh, the old gods splash arts. See, why ain't these cards? This is what they should make as cards.
Yeah.
The old god set's fucking class. And the Lat Illusions. They look like Demon Slayer ones. Cosmic Paladin Scion. That's fucking sick. Cosmic Paladin Nunu. That looks fucking sick as well. I don't like the Soulfighter. Oh, Soulfighter Shaco is pretty fucking cool. And Soulfighter Jin. That's pretty cool too.
Soulfighter Shaco is a fucking good skin.
Oh, I need that skin. I need that Elderwood Wukong. Bard's got some fucking cool skins now. That Shanghai Scrolls Bard.
I like the Kench one.
Yeah, I like that one as well. See, these splash arts are fucking sick.
Yeah, they're class, aren't they?
Why'd they look so shit in card form? How have they fucked up that hard?
Even Ink Shadow Aurelian Soul looks fucking
Oh.
He's got fat chin and beard.
Shiba Yumi. Kibblehead Kled. Broken Covenant Nocturne. That's fucking sick.
Yeah, that does look sick.
Broken Covenant Zaya. Astronaut Singe. Astronaut Zeref. We used to know all these skins, Lynn, as they came out. We would know them before they came out. And there's so many we don't know now.
Oh, that was cool.
Which one?
Go up. Go up. Oh no. Scroll down. Keep doing it. Go up. Scroll down.
Oh my god.
Never mind.
Which one?
I don't think I can find that anymore.
Which one?
It's not on it. It's the same champion? That one. Miss Maker. Iria?
Mythmaker Aurelia. So you like all the Asian skins. I'm glad how you say true to form.
That was so cool.
I love how you're saying that around all of these Space Screw skins.
Space Screw.
And these Imperial skins.
Meh.
They look sick. The Zac one looks crazy.
Not really for me.
I know you like what you like. So I'm surprised you don't like the Spirit Blossom ones, but The Spirit Blossom ones are quite cute. Oh my god, Fright Night Druid. No, this is fucking class.
Oh, that does look sick. Ergot though, Fortnite Ergot.
It's fucking Scarecrow. Oh shit.
Until next time.
Look at Monster Tamer Lulu.
Oh, that's an old one. That was on TFT.
That's fucking cute though.
What's the 10 Vega?
I don't like the high new lot. Sea Dog Yasuo. So they got fucking Nautilus's armor on. That's cool. Oh, look at the bees. Bees. What about this one, Lynn?
Which one? Oh, that one's cool too.
She's
But not as cool as the one before.
She's a support. What about this one, Lynn?
Meh. No.
But he's a cafe cutie.
Oh.
That one?
Not cute at all. That was even cute. Cafe cutie on the left. Oh, this one is cute.
You know about Annie? She's got a big teddy bear behind her called Tippers.
Yeah, she's cute. Cutie Annie.
What about Soraka?
Meh.
What about Vlad?
Why are you guys picking skin here?
We're just browsing, you know?
No. The color
Shaco's got some fucking sick skins. I hate it, but he's got some skin. When the fuck did World of Warcraft skins get put in here?
They were quite old, these ones. These have got to be, you're in like 4, 5 years old now, surely.
Yeah, wait, how long have you played it for?
Nah, we were playing in Project, mate, surely.
There's loads of projects.
Yeah, but was there? I mean, I've used Project, it might be in the Rams though.
I wonder, like, besides those people of this company or developer of this game, are there any other players that actually have all the skins of this game?
100%.
You think so?
100%.
That would be crazy.
Have
Get
you
all of them?
you seen Battlecast Zack?
Yeah.
Who?
That looks sick. Battlecast Zack. I found another Elderwood skin I want. Elderwood Zaya. Because then you can get Elderwood Rakan and we could be a pair.
Oh, we look fucking cute.
We'd look cute as fuck, mate. That Odyssey Kha'Zix looks fucking sick. What about this one, Lynn?
Looks like what Scizor thinks he is.
Yeah.
Sizer.
Yeah.
Pokemon naming.
It's okay.
Oh, damn.
What about this one?
No.
No.
Ew.
What about... What about this one?
No. You find that cool?
It's me if I wore that outfit.
Seriously?
Pajama Guardian Trev.
Yeah, it's...
Yeah, kinda.
She saw the belly
One
and she's
more
like, yeah,
game.
kinda.
One more game.
SUBBOOT. Let's go. Yeah, getting paired up. That, Braum, Yasuo. What's the jungle one? Melvin World Keeps. That's Yasuo one. Counting Stars was the jungle one, wasn't it? Counting Stars. I'll take this buff. Have an easy game. Walk the river, protect your lane. You extended, you got caught. Never mind, we'll play just run. Gonna catch you slow. You can take the buff, my bro. I'll just take some kills and go. You can take the kill, my bro. I'll just take some farm and go. No dragon god spite.
Crystal, Art Tick, or Art Seeker.
I like the yellow one.
And it was all yellow.
And I'm not saying that just because of Lynn.
That's Arclight. I don't have Arclight.
Oh, okay.
Voices.
Huh? What?
Races.
Nah, that's not me.
You just called me yellow. I hurt you.
No, that's not me.
Uh-huh.
I would never.
I was joking. You do know that, right?
We had 2 tanks, and then we had no tanks.
I've always been Varus.
I know.
So this is out.
I picked Severe when we had 2 tanks. That Badger Teemo though, Lynn.
Fucking allow it, Swain. Fuck off.
And
It's cute.
you ignoring the Zinzao and Viego that would be following them in.
Yeah,
That's the raccoon. That's why you like raccoon so much.
No, that's called Yordle.
Yodel?
Yeah, so you know Ziggs, my cat, he's named after a Yordle,
Yeah.
one of these. You know Teemo, he's named after a Yordle, one of these.
Mm.
All of my guinea pigs were named after Yordles, apart from Cho'Gath, who was the big fucking monster that kept silencing me.
Mm.
How do you not have a skin for fucking Jax, man?
Because he hates charity.
Oh mate, I know what you're saying. We're gonna get fucked.
Yeah, like hard.
Lynn,
The arse.
Lynn, we're gonna get penetrated.
Why? Because the whole team.
Their whole team.
Doesn't-
They've got Alawi and Swain that would just walk into us the entire time. Then you've got Shinzao and Viego who will follow that up. And then you'll have Draven just hitting from the back. Clap for cheeks. And we've got no tank.
Or Jax.
Nah, we got no tank, brother.
Brother.
So you guys are squishy.
Me and Joe, yeah, we're both ADCs. We're attack damage carries.
We're top blokes.
How come you guys don't pick the champions you're really good at?
We're good at all champs. That's the problem. We literally know how to play everyone apart from the new ones. Like that game you watched me today, Lynn, on my YouTube. That's game of the guy called Silas. That's my first time playing him. That's the future. Yeah, that was my first time playing him, Lynn, and I absolutely destroyed the top lane. That's why when I got the kill, I just looked at the camera like, really? Ah, I almost turned back for a little slappy slap. You don't mean to catch my carry, we're gonna build off. That's UPPORT.
Who's... I'm sorry. Who the fuck was hitting me?
Just the person stood next to you the entire time.
I didn't fucking see anyone.
Yeah, it's Alawi.
It's not minion. I'll allow it then. Oh, I need some more Bina, mate.
More Ibina.
Have that. I can have that, mate. Oh no.
Ah, mate, teamwork there. I need to catch my carry, we're getting built up. No! He killed me. I need to catch my carry, I'm getting built up. Luke said, is that Connor playing or Joe?
Oh, fucking little rat. He's talking the fucking big talk now. He's hiding behind his monitor.
He's talking about Joel's brother, Lynn, who, whenever he played support, used to take our kills.
I
I don't-
thought it was because I was playing Paris, but
So you guys cannot like get all the kills. You cannot buy stuff, upgrade.
Yeah, so the main people who need the kills are the carries, not the supports. And he used to save his abilities to try and take the kills.
Ah, wow.
Ratty behaviour.
Because then he'd be like, oh, fucking 12-4, whatever.
And then we'd lose.
He fucking robbed all the kills.
I don't think he's ever seen double digits.
Oh, 9 then. 9.
Just had to catch a carry, we're getting built up. We also made him so angry once, Lynn, he left the chat. We made him so angry.
You're gonna lose friends for that.
Nah, it's all better. That little Swain rat, did you see that?
Oh, to fucking do it, didn't he?
Yeah, we made him so angry, Lynn. It was so funny. We also made him almost quit a game of this.
Fuck.
Because we got to the end, Lynn. We were just about to win, and me and Flabby stopped hitting the Nexus to win, and we let them kill us, and they went out the other end and won. Cinema, absolute cinema.
Yeah, good.
Absolute cinema.
He loves it though.
He does love it. He wouldn't. Wait, once, right, Luke was staying around my house, and I used to have loads of G.I. Joes, and he fucking set fire to one of my Street Fighter ones, and I was like, mid-saying, what the fuck are you doing? He shoved it in my mouth. I just fucking burst out laughing. I couldn't do anything other than laugh, because the proper cut me off. It was like, what the fuck? And I remember once, because he's always been an early roser, and I never used to be. I remember once just fucking hearing this like tapping. I was like, what the fuck are you doing? And I looked over and he had his finger skates on, just sitting in the back of a chair. It was fucking. And another time, he was just doing something, I can't remember what it was. And I went, what the fuck are you doing? And this battery just fucking got launched into my head. From nowhere, just a fucking random battery just dashed at me. Fucking funny. Good old days, yeah. And me and Luke have worked together on 2 occasions as well.
Oh, what the fuck happened there?
Them. Lynn, I worked for a telesales company once, right? And Luke joined at the same time, and it was towards the end when I had enough. I got sat on the naughty table away from all my friends. So I was like, nah, I'm not having that. Yeah, because I was disruptive. And I was like, nah, I'm not having that. I quit. So I left. And Luke was like, what? So Luke left. I remember Silent Port going, huh? What are you leaving? What's happening? It's fucking so funny.
He was fucking devastated.
That was fucking funny, that. That was a funny job. Horrible, but funny. There was one time as well at Hampshire Cosmetics, when Luke was my supervisor. He lent me to another supervisor, and they were doing something called salt scrub. So I had to manually fucking stir this barrel of thick salt scrub, right, in the boiling hot. And he got me back at the end of the day, and I was like just shriveled. And he went, "What the fuck did you do with it?"
You guys did a lot of jobs differently.
me and him worked together twice.
How many jobs you have been
I've had loads of jobs.
done before?
I've had about
Huh.
7, maybe 10 jobs. I was at the job where Luke left before me was Hampshire Cosmetics. I was there 6 years. And the phone one, I was there almost 2 years. My last job, I was there for 12 years, 10 years, something like that. I worked at a golf course. I worked at a pet shop.
Academy West Ham.
How many years you been working?
Since I was like,
when
I did nothing for as long as I could.
Work like 15 or something.
You did take a gap year.
16. Yeah, I took a gap year and did nothing, and then I took another gap year and went to college.
Took a gap year to play.
Yeah. I did nothing for a year. Then I played. Then I went to college after my golf job, and then did nothing that year too. How the fuck did I survive?
Seven jobs, yeah.
There's probably one on. Oh, and another one on the phones for fair trade practice and Debenhams. I worked on the phones at 3 different jobs.
Is it really common that you guys started to work at 15 or
Yeah.
16?
Yeah.
Oh.
Oh, is he still
I'm trying to touch my carry. We're getting
You
real
have school need to go though, so like you just do it as part time or like during weekends.
We finished school at 15, 16, darling.
So that's like finish middle school.
No, that's finished all your obligations of school.
You don't have to go into education after that, like college or anything.
You can go straight into work.
I need to die, so I'm just gonna fucking die.
You gotta build up.
I'm at 4K.
We're gonna build up. SUPPORT. I don't know how I survived on my fucking wages from A to C services.
No, I don't.
The thought of living on £330 a week is nuts. It's nuts to me. I almost make double that now and I struggle.
Because you have kids now.
I had kids. I had a house then.
Did the food price go up or what?
Oh, everything has gone up, but to think of it in that extent is nuts.
Oh, I saw all those TikToks. Yeah,
What'd you say?
I saw all those TikToks that kind of complaining about how the fast food industry have all their food price go up so much they're barely able to afford it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the way it
It's
is.
like they're complaining about their government, etc., etc. Like,
Yeah, it's
that's
awful.
your president.
Yeah, it's
That's
awful.
you guys.
He got into power because people are fucking dumb. But we literally have the choice of cat shit or dog shit. I prefer my the way I said it. We have either the option to step in dog shit or step in cat shit or roll around in geese, dog, and cat shit. That's our options. Our government has utterly failed. Our government system is awful. Can she not do a third of my health with just Eri? Asking for a friend? Has she maxed her E, do you think?
Probably not. Well, she might have done.
If this Teemo could just frontline. He has got Warmogs in his defense.
In fucking tank mode. Yeah, I'm just getting fucking on me, mate.
Yeah, tell me about
If
it.
I live, we win, but...
Oh, Jack's doing just Jack's things. But unfortunately, Teemo, you don't have what it takes to kill that swing. Nah. I need to catch my rain from getting built off. If you watching.
Kraken.
I've gone Kraken.
Makes sense too.
Zen, can you just... I get there and I just get fucking absolutely dumpstered.
Oh no, it's fucking Jax.
That's
He just...
Viego, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, it's 26 and 6 at one point.
I was 7 and 10 at one point.
Oh, that's a shout. Little mortal reminder, maybe stop fucking healing.
Oh, that is a shout.
Okay, that'll max out my thing as well. Yeah.
I'm cooking. I'm cooking. No, I'm not. I'm cooking. I cooked, Joe. I cooked.
Nice. We get there in it.
Why me, brother? Why me? Why me? Not the 26 plus kill Varus.
29. I was trying to attack him, but then fucking Mushti got me.
I just don't understand why me.
Go on, Jax.
What should I go last item?
Mortal Reminder? Did you go it?
No.
Would that give you... That would max out your crit as well, wouldn't it? Or would it give you 75% crit?
I'm going it.
I've got 100 now, so I'm just fucking laughing.
Oh, in one of the bot games we played, Joel, with Lynn, we killed all of them, and Lynn did something, and she killed 2 of them, and she pressed every button, so accidentally she pressed the thumbs up button like she was BMing them. It's so good.
I didn't even realize I pressed that.
It's so funny.
Nah, you're flaming them, we know. You were letting them know. Oh, got knocked up. Won't let me
Oh, he's got Warmog, so he's going to heal while invisible.
He's gonna backdoor, maybe.
Nah, they've got to have seen him there. There we go, yeah.
No!
Jax is going to try and backdoor now, and we're going to lose.
Yeah. And then I'm gonna try backdoor. I'm scared. Yeah, this is how we do it. This is how we throw.
Ah, you almost had him. I need to get my cat. Do I wait 200 gold?
No.
Do I wait 150 gold?
No, just join us, mate.
It's for Mortal Reminder.
You give a fuck, mate.
Do I wait 100 gold? Yeah, just win it about me, it's fine. You crack on. That cake looks nice, Lynn.
I know, right?
That's
Strawberry season.
Ah, market fresh strawberries. Nice.
If I don't get a fucking S, I'll fucking quit. I'm handing in my bloody resignation. Yes! It's all I get, baby! S plus, let's go!
How did I get A minus for that?
To the bees, to the boys, and to the fucking buzz we're gonna be feeling after an S plus, baby. That's what I'm talking about. Let's go.
It's such a fucking rat. Luke is watching as well. Luke saw it. Don't need to touch my carry, we're getting built off. Put that in your plate. Do you know we can make an Aram team for Clash?
Can we?
Yeah. Don't need to touch my carry, we're getting built off. SUPPORT.
You know, can you make your Monzo card look like certain things? I'll make that stick studies. Fucking light work, mate. When Crab got's an option, I'll have him. Oh, I ain't going these.
Oh god. Oh god, there's no one.
Welcome to the League of Draven.
Draven. Fucking hell, you're down bad, brother.
There's no one who.
Oh, thank God.
Thank God for that.
Someone done the Lord's work with that.
They did. Not much better though, Jesus Christ.
I've got a list.
Oh, Tristana. I want Tristana.
Oh.
Give me Tristana, I want her.
Please. Please give me Trist.
Once a bandle gunner, always a bandle gunner.
I want Tristana, I got the Tristana.
Dark Harvest. Do I just go for that?
Is the bear from American too?
Is what?
The bear the show.
Yes, America.
I always think that like American shows emphasize on how important to talk with each other, like with people.
Yeah, instead of getting shit done, they want to talk it out all the time.
Yeah.
I fucking hate it.
What's that, sorry?
Like, it's so like
Americans, they want to talk everything out and have a million meetings rather than do the job. That's what England's like at the moment. BAE is like that massively.
Well, it's just because it's a big corporation, though, isn't it?
Yeah. Just a lot of meetings after meetings after meetings after meetings.
I think that's just every big corporation, surely.
Yeah. They need to look at that.
it feels like they think like talking that can solve all the problems.
It just can't. Sometimes just picking up what it needs to be done and lifting it. That's what needs to be done. Get it over your shoulder and chuck it into the sea. Hey, Yodo! Ah!
Oh, Brink ain't gonna be there tomorrow.
Is he pissed?
No, he's just he's got a viewing on a house in the morning, so he's just fucking not.
I was going to say to you and Luke, come play Magic, but I saw that Pompey was playing, so I was like, nah, I won't even ask.
Yeah, mate.
Don't need to
Although
touch my carry.
I've said I'm not gonna bother. I
What?
said I wasn't gonna drink, but I can be easy after the day I've had today. I can be easily convinced.
Right, you're not doing this like very well, convincing Lynn you're not an alcoholic.
What?
She fully believes you're an alcoholic.
I'm not an alcoholic.
Yeah, thanks to you. Thanks to you.
Why is that thanks to me?
You're the one tell me all the time that he's drinking.
Because he's drinking.
I'm not drinking all the time.
Every time she asks me, you're out drinking. Every time.
Even the picture you sent me, he had a glass of wine or alcohol on the hand.
I can't remember which one it was.
Which one?
I can't remember.
You holding a.
Oh, the recent one. The recent one. She was like, "Oh, where's Flabby? The one from that wedding."
Oh, the wedding.
Yeah, she was like, "Where's Flabby?" And I just sent her that picture. No way.
Well, I was kneeling. Well,
Yeah.
Fucking
Yeah.
Oh, right. Oh, I did have a bit, didn't I? I'll tell you what, yeah, actually, when I was at that wedding, they kept, like, everyone was going, like, how many are you drinking tonight? And I was like, I'm starting to think that maybe, you know what, maybe I am.
Luke doesn't think he's ever going to be the same again after your birthday night.
It was fucking vile, to be fair. I mean, great day. I had a fucking great time. But the morning was absolutely horrific.
It sounds like you guys drink and you cannot stop, because like you're gonna be suffering the hangover the next day.
That's how bleak Britain is right now, Lynn.
That's how what?
That's how bleak Britain is.
No, I've been doing it a while.
Shut the fuck up. I'm trying to help you. I told Lynn about the me being drunk around Lewis's old flat and Luke sprinkling some wee on me, and I had to give him. I was hugging the toilet. I gave him 10 lashings with a wet tea towel. That's satisfying. That was.
On the Con stag do, my mate Con, he passed out, and like next to the toilet, and I've got a picture with like the flash on of my dad pissing in the toilet with Con just on the floor next to him. Oh, they
He didn't notice you were there. Oh,
No,
he
he knew it.
doesn't care.
No, he said, well, I'll go for a piss, but I won't wake him. To be fair, he was being nice. He didn't wake him up.
So he just doesn't care that people like on the floor. He just goes down.
Nah,
I was
that's funny, isn't it?
I was curled around the toilet. With a half a kebab in a box.
Classic. I don't know.
That we were watching. Was that weren't the night that me and Luke stayed out and watched every extended version of Lord of the Rings? It was fucking torture. Like towards the end, it was torture. But the first one, you know, when Gandalf gets really, really big. Yeah, because he got big and he went. So I absolutely fucking laughed my head off because I thought it was in the film, and Lewis was crying because Lewis made the noise. It fucking broke me. I don't know how we stayed awake. Lynn, have a look. Google it. How long each extended version of the Lord of the Rings is in hours. Me and Shadowly Luke stayed up that entire time.
Extended.
Lord of the Rings.
You know, in the first Star Wars,
Yeah.
when Luke gets hit on the head with the Tusken Raider, and then Obi-Wan turns up.
Yeah.
When I first watched that as a kid, I didn't notice he screamed, but Obi-Wan actually screams in that scene, and me and my mate were watching it pissed, and I fucking died, mate, because I never heard Obi-Wan fucking scream like that. It's so fucking weird. He goes like, "Aye!"
I didn't know that either.
It's fucking so weird to scare the Tuskens away.
Yeah, so we didn't plan to stay up all night and watch it, Lynn, but we ended up staying up and
over 11 hours.
Yeah, we watched them all
In one night?
in one night.
That's crazy.
Yeah, Lewis tapped out pretty early on that. That was a fucking funny night. That was. I remember why we did it. I think we watched the first one and we just went fuck it. We just went fuck it and just did it all.
Is it that good? Like you just want to keep watching?
Oh, they are fantastic films. Like there's no denying that. But that was a fucking. That's only 3 films, by the way, Lynn. 11 that long is 3 films.
I think I didn't watch it in the first place because of how long it is.
Oh, it's you have. It's the best trilogy ever done.
It's probably my favourite movies.
It's a lot of people's favorite movies, mate.
Since Star Wars turned
11
shit,
hours?
it's my favourite
No.
now.
Yeah, but they're not. That's the extended versions.
But since I know the extended version, why wouldn't I not watching that one?
That is the correct attitude to have, and I love you more because you said that. Fucking that Janna and that Draven were fucking thirsty for me then. Jesus Christ.
I couldn't have locked down any more cunts then.
I'm sorry,
By
mate.
that, I mean that one Draven. And everyone's got their fucking fingers in their fucking arseholes, mate.
Mate, what am I supposed to do? Look at Alphamon.
Chocolate finger, chocolate fist, mate. That's what all of you cunts had there.
Go to sleep with an itchy bum. Wake up with a smelly finger.
Fucking hell, we got Vex.
I just thought that. Don't try to touch my carry, we're getting peeled off. SUPPORT.
I love Richie.
Yeah, it's a shame he's paying the thing.
But he was the thing.
He's the thing in the new Fantastic Four, yeah.
I thought it was the torch.
Yeah,
Torchman?
he would suit the
Torch?
Human Torch way better. Yeah, but yeah, he's the thing. I haven't seen it yet. Pedro Pascal annoys me, and the guy who plays the Human
Like-
Torch isn't a good actor.
He's just in everything at the moment, isn't it? It's boring.
That's the touchy, mate. You see Green Goblin tell him to not touchy his wife.
Nah.
Yeah, he was like, get off her. I can delete the Draven, but everyone else is on me like fucking flies on shit. That's my problemo. How tanky is he, by the way?
Yeah, he's quite.
He's only got a Sunfire.
He only has a Sunfire, Joe.
That's a fucking joke. Is he higher level? It's got to be higher level.
He's level 12.
Right.
The turret.
I was about 10.
The turret did nothing.
Yeah, it done actually fucking nothing, mate.
Don't try to touch my carry, you're getting peeled off. SUPP. Oh, mate. Don't kill my gyms like that.
What about that truth?
I can kill him. But for some reason... Did you see how... Obviously, you're not watching my stream. Lynn, did you see how many times... Did you see how many times I pressed R?
I can kill him. Fight to him. How can I see how many times you hit Amish?
When the...
I'm not looking through your window.
When the... Because you're in the fucking stream, you dick. When the crosshair comes up, Lynn, there's a little crosshair that comes up, and you hear this noise. That's me. That's me spamming R. So I did my
Every
full
time you
cut.
grit your teeth, you press an R.
I am, mate. I am.
You pressing R.
Yeah, they kill me instantly.
Yeah, that was a combo.
Get me out. Get me out of this fucking game. Maybe I need to stop playing this.
Yeah, you do.
Oh my god, you guys get killed instantly.
I think she's useless.
DJ Smoggy.
They think I'm weak or something. I'm only weak when there's fucking 5 of them. Fucking tick got me, didn't it?
Tick tock on the clock, but the body don't stop. Tonight I'ma fight till we see the sunlight. Oh my god, he
Fucking tick got me.
Yeah, he got me the same thing. I need to touch a carry, we're getting filled out. SUPPORT.
Stop the PP song.
It's not the PP song.
Just stop saying PP.
SUPPORT.
Oh no.
That was weird. I don't know why that Janna did that.
But no, she did it on the tower a little while ago as well. When we still had one. If I had one.
Fucking Oriana ult, man.
Oh, I can't kill her.
We've got a Darius.
Do we?
What?
What? What? Say him like that. God damn.
Wait and see if he does more damage than you.
I honestly didn't know we had a Darius.
God, yeah.
fucking didn't either.
I just saw him.
No, we had a vet. We lost our second turret.
He died with me, and I was like, wait a minute. We haven't got a Viego. What is it? We haven't got someone who can turn into Darius. I couldn't get going on that. Everyone was just fucking jumping on me. Yeah, I did most damage to our teammate.
I went wrong build. I shouldn't have gone Rod, I should have gone Storm. And then into Crypt.
That was fucking tough, that was.
There's Perf mine. So many PCs on Black Friday. What's Overwatch doing? Overwatch? Overclockers.
I don't know, mate. Possibly.
Overcock.
I don't know why you just don't get the Argos one and pay it over the year. Why you just don't do that?
Because same reason I haven't got a new phone.
Yeah, but you don't want to be on your phone.
Hmm?
You don't want to use your phone.
No. You are right.
That's different. I hate my phone. This Pixel 9 Pro is shit compared to the Pixel 7 Pro.
I might just run out of battery too soon now. So use one.
What phones you going?
I'm not gonna get the nothing.
I thought you would. I thought you were one of them.
Yeah.
Oh mate,
Well,
go
Motorola now.
go Dash Queen. Oh Pike, mate. Pike. Caitlin.
I'm fucking Ramus, lad.
I'm on the case.
I'm so shit on Pike. I'm going Pike. No, we need a tank.
Do you hear that, Lynn? I'm so shit on Pike. I'm going Pike.
If there's any time to be
Pike.
a
What
redemption,
does that mean?
Pike's a character. He's a character up here. And he was like, I'm so shit on Pike. I'm going Pike.
I'm fucking going.
It's so flabbergasted.
He's not going to be. He's staying tank, but he wants to.
Oh, fucking do I? Do I?
Do I? Do I? What's that from?
What do I?
Do I?
Do I?
Black
Oh.
Friday game.
PCs, here we go, baby.
I didn't realise how tired I was, you know.
It's a good job you just fired up another around them.
Yeah, my eyes feel puffy. That's how tired I feel.
Puffy boy.
Puffy boy. Find the touch my carry. We can't build off. S-U-P-P. So I am Caitlin now, darling. You're the character you really like.
AP, AP, AP.
Yeah.
AD.
Yeah. But I'm just.
And so you would play Caitlyn of 2 games before?
No.
Two big games?
No, that's severe.
Oh, Misfortune. Sorry. Maybe you're good at her.
It's ADC, baby.
So you're good at ADC.
It appears to be the case when it's my most hated role.
Oh my
I'm
god.
going in.
He's not going in.
I'm going in.
I got some fucking good clips this year as Ramus. Don't let me down.
Have ya?
They're
Yeah.
rolling!
Yeah, it's him again. It's him again. You see, Lynn remembers.
Yeah, I remember that clip.
One where you roll up, go in, and just die instantly.
I watched that clip so many times. It was funny.
Tell me to catch my fairy, we're gonna build up.
Oh,
Time so close.
He's not, mate. I got him.
Wait.
I got Tazza, mate.
Would you?
Mm-hmm. Oh, I need to actually use my fucking league. My fucking... I keep forgetting.
Oh, that's why you want to use this overlay?
Yeah.
I thought why are you going back to the old one?
What? Hold on. What?
You were the old overlay the whole time. Like,
Yeah, I
why
know.
you change back? I didn't ask. I was
You sh-
confused, but I forgot. I want to ask, but then I forgot in a second.
Oh, they've got an Akali. Why am I
Yeah,
frontline?
Because I'm being a beaten.
I like this overlay because you fit perfectly in the tiny corner in the bottom.
Trying to say I'm a cuck. You saying I'm sitting in the corner on a chair?
No, your camera.
They've got an Echo?
Yeah. Keep
I
standing
really-
in this shield.
I really need to look at their team. Ah. I'm glad you like it. I mean, I'd appreciate if you didn't do that, Simon.
All the thing was running around the wall then, and so I was just punching him over it. It's like he was leaning over the wall, just fucking punch him in the back of the head. Oh god. I love that. Just a big fan of that.
Fucking Akali. I need to get an overlay for COD and Marvel Rivals.
You haven't played COD for a while.
Played it yesterday.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Do you stream it?
I did not.
You played
You play it by yourself?
Oh no, I did play. I did stream it. Yeah, I was by myself. I didn't know Howdy was in a game. She just wasn't responding, so I was calling her all the words under the sun.
Mm.
What? Oh, she's got fucking Storm Surge. I was like, how the fuck did I die?
I was like, how the fuck did you die?
Fucking Storm Surge, bitch. Bitch.
Fucking hell. I can get to him.
Balon just walked through us.
Oh, I've got him.
Oh, what?
Oh, I've got Bramble in I.
need to get some life steal in quick. Yeah, Scion just walks past us, mate.
Yeah. You said that.
He killed the
Bingo.
yeah.
Oh, I love it. At the end of this season,
What's that?
Sydney, the fact girl that we don't like her because of her personality
Yeah.
in the whole show.
Yeah. What happened?
You wanna spoil?
Yeah.
Spoiler?
Yeah.
She didn't leave the restaurant.
No, shame.
She actually stayed and add Richie into the partnership of the restaurant. And who's the Akami? He's leaving.
Ah. So the best character's leaving.
He wants to find out who he is besides the kitchen. I'm like, he said like he doesn't love being a cook anymore, so that's why he need to find out who he is. It's tiny better than the last episode. Like how long it is? Like 20 minutes. Actually, like the whole point of the whole season.
Yeah.
Yeah, you just need to watch the last episode.
I'm still alive.
Fucking Scion almost killed me. Didn't even know he's behind me. I didn't even know he's behind me.
Hello, Richie.
Do you know Mr. Duck thought I was American?
Yeah.
Unreal.
What do you mean unreal?
I'm in no way American.
No way he's America?
No way I'm American.
Oh. What's your point?
Called me American. Do you know how insulting that is?
You're gonna offend so many Americans if they actually watch your stream.
I'm not seeing your point.
My point is, don't say it out loud.
What do you mean? You ask any Englishman that question. Australian, I'll accept.
Would you? Convict.
Yeah, but there are convicts.
Such a prolonged fight.
It really was.
Oh, when will Luke go to Japan?
Next year. Around March.
Yeah.
If he's going on his birthday, yeah.
Our country actually have those. What does that call? Like suggesting from the government that like
Don't go to
Chinese
Japan.
people don't go to Japan
Yeah.
recently because the new president, the female president, all those.
She don't give a fuck.
Yeah. So like, there actually lots of Chinese people cancel their trip to that, and then
Yeah, I saw that.
and then the people are regretting that because Japanese people are regretting that because like.
My favourite one's when
They kinda,
people
like,
try and tell
raise-
me that your social credit score will stop you from doing stuff. That's my favourite one. That's my favourite one, Lynn.
Yeah, when I heard it, I find it so ridiculous.
They say about it at work, and I just don't say anything. I'm just like, nah, can't be bothered to even fucking.
Yeah, those people actually believe it. That's useless to explain to them.
What she's really doing is she's spreading propaganda to me. She's doing the Uno reverse card. And when I get there, I'll have to stay there forever. Oh no.
Oh, remember that American TikToker?
Yeah.
That who went to
The-
China.
Is he the one with the
traveled
face?
again?
Is he the one with the face? I don't
Yeah,
like.
yeah.
Yeah.
The one who like in the McDonald's and order chips and something like you were, and you said like actually like among all those food that he only ordered that it like makes you unfollow him.
Yeah.
And then I watch his newest TikTok. You say like people are saying how good Chinese food is like, and I'm just like meh,
I got you.
that kind of.
Yeah.
And he actually didn't actually try any Chinese food in his TikTok, and then saying that he didn't even try to.
That doesn't
And
surprise
he's
me
in
at all.
China for so long. Yeah. I thought it was like actually a fair, like
No. You should. As soon as I said I didn't like his face, you should have understood that to absolute complete fucking dead end.
because he's
You can tell.
faking it.
You can tell a lot by people's faces. And the fact that he's like this with his nose in the camera, like looking like fucking Ratatouille, you should have known straight away. Deji in China is fucking funny, you know.
Oh, I haven't seen that.
Someone was asleep on a bench and he just literally sat next to him. Went, alright, mate. And it was a woman.
No. Yes.
I'm going in.
And American TikTok are actually on the news, on our public news.
Yeah.
So like actually give him a lot of attention.
Yeah. That's China's mistake, I'm
Yeah,
afraid.
and then after like people following him because of then he did something like that and just like
The Chinese Trump makes me laugh.
oh that guy. He's really good at the impressions.
We got the best things, the simple dish. Sometimes in China, I want to keep it simple. So good.
I just like the LED song.
Oh, Tony, I fucking love
I know
Tony.
what.
I said to Lynn when we're in Shenzhen, I want to try and meet him.
He'd be a fucking geezer.
You might be able to. He's
Yeah.
out selling those LED thing. You can like pretend to be a businessman and then go talk to him.
I'd buy one.
Or you just like say, oh, I want to buy one, so can I talk to you and then film a TikTok with you?
And I'd just be like, hey, Tony. Anyway. I've got damage now, guys. Guys, I've got damage now.
What's those like eye thingy above your head?
That is a character called Twisted Fate's Ultimate. He can see where everyone is on the map and teleport wherever he wants.
Yeah, that's cool.
It's not. It's really shit.
It's not?
It's really shit.
Look cool.
It looks cool, yeah, but it's really shit though. Did he just miss?
Yes.
What silenced me? Akali hasn't got a silence, and nor does Sion.
Ooh.
You were honest, were you?
It looks like you got killed by one hit.
My ult stopped and didn't go off. I got moved by something.
Yeah, I don't know.
That was a good ult from Diana, that. This Garen's pussy ult.
That Scion is stacking though, so we do need to.
He's nothing to me, mate.
Yeah, when he dies, he was though.
Nah, not if I get further away. See?
No, Heim, I don't run towards him, you silly sausage.
How is Diana still alive? How is she still alive?
Let's go. Let's fucking go.
Joe, they're gonna jump past you to me. Joe. They did exactly that, Joe.
Did they?
Yeah. Good old. Yeah, that Akali deletes me.
I think she deletes everyone, to be fair. I'm getting Hydra just so I got a bit of fucking damage.
Hell yeah, good build. I would have gone that second item.
Yeah, I need to stay alive though.
Look how many stacks you've got.
Look how many Sion's got though. Sion's got fucking way more.
Yeah, fuck that guy.
Yeah, fuck him.
He cheats death.
Fucking great. Oh yeah, he probably does. That's probably why he's scaling so much actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%.
There we go. That should be game. Oh, it's about fucking old.
Victory. Do you believe that is the last game for tonight?
Oh, a little S minus, Trevi.
God, how shit are they on Caitlyn? Oh, I did 2 jokes damage, okay. I don't think I queued like more than 10 times. I just auto attacked.
Yeah, it was Scion and that, didn't they? They had so many tanks.
Yeah. And as soon as I got Kraken Slayer, that's when Scion didn't matter. That item's so
Just
good.
wailing on Tamara and Scion. What,
Yeah.
Kraken?
Yeah, Kraken Slayer's such a good item.
Kraken.
You can't not get Collector as well. I think they should remove the item. If every build has to build it, I think you should remove it.
Yeah, well, I feel that about Heartsteel, though.
Yeah, I agree. I think you should remove it. Every game, Heartsteel and Collectors, no matter what.
Mm.
Don't want to claim any of this shit. It's crap. I feel like a pauper with only 21k.
You should do, mate. I think. Well, no, I don't have as more than you, but I did before I spunked all. You were down in the depths with me, and I couldn't even afford a champion every time.
Look at this one, Lynn. This is also another one. Lynn? Have you fallen asleep? I think she's fallen asleep. I know. You're a massive poo. Yeah. No, she'd tell me if she's going for a poo. Right, mate. I will bid you adieu. Goodbye.
Luck tomorrow.
Why? Oh, yeah. Hopefully I won't have to speak to anyone the entire weekend. It'd be really good.